Hello, welcome to Basic Photography 101. What field of photography interests you the most? Shooting people, landscapes, children, soccer, sports, other events, portraits, weddings, and maybe you like to shoot nature. Well, whatever field of photography grabs your attention, to get a good photo, you must know and understand how to achieve good exposure. Shooting with your digital camera set on auto doesn't guarantee you a good exposure every time, and it doesn't make you a good photographer. The camera is doing all the thinking for you based on how your camera is set up. Setup, that brings up another question. What is setup? Back in the days of shooting on film, you only had to do 3 or 4 things to take a photograph. First, you would select what film you were going to use, whether it would be color or black and white, and load that film into the camera. And then depending on the film you chose, whether it would be Kodachrome 64 or black and white 125 or Ektachrome 400, you would set that film speed on your camera before you take the picture. Then, when you got ready to take the picture, all you did was set the f-stop and shutter speed and take a photograph. Today's digital cameras are a lot like a small computer. They have menu settings and sub-menu settings. There are dozens of options and settings to choose from. Most of those options are a matter of preference and choice. The most important settings are ISO, which is the film speed, picture quality, decide whether you want to shoot RAW if you have that option, TIFF, or JPEGs. And you also, within that setting, choose the size of the photographs, whether you wanted to shoot medium, large, or small images. White balance is another important setting. You have to choose the correct white balance for the light conditions that you're shooting in. For example, if you're shooting outside in sunshine, you want your white balance to be set on sun. If you're shooting inside under tungsten light, you want to be sure it's set on tungsten setting. Or you might choose the auto setting in some cases. Another option is color space. You have 2 options within color space, either sRGB or Adobe RGB. Adobe RGB has a wider color gamut than sRGB, so if you plan on using a software program to manipulate your photographs or send them to a printer or put them in a brochure or something like that, you want to use Adobe RGB. If you're just going to shoot the pictures and put them on the internet or send them to a friend, you just might want to use sRGB. Now that I've given you a photo tip on how to set up your camera, let's get back to my original question about exposure. What is exposure? Exposure is the combination of the aperture setting and the shutter speed working together to give you a photograph. You might ask, what is aperture? Aperture is the f-stop setting on the lens or inside the camera, which is the iris lens opening when you shoot the picture. To answer these questions and give you more information about exposure, here is a segment from my Basic Photography 101 video, which is a 45-minute high-definition video presentation that teaches, explains, and illustrates the basic principles of photography, which are exposure, depth of field, composition, and numerous other topics on photography. This video will teach you basically everything you need to know how to be a better photographer.
Basic Photography 101 is for the beginner and anyone who wants to know how to take better photos. The purpose of this video is to help you understand the basic principles of photography: exposure, depth of field, and composition. We'll discuss light, ISO settings, aperture, shutter speed, and other photography terms, making them simple to understand and apply. It doesn't matter if you shoot with a film camera or a digital camera. The basic principles are the same. If you shoot with your camera settings on automatic, the camera is doing all the thinking for you. The camera is adjusting the aperture and shutter speed based on the light striking the subject. You have no control of the exposure. You can only control the composition of the photograph. In this point-and-shoot method, you get a correctly exposed photograph in most situations. But some situations call for adjustments on your part. For instance, when you're shooting a subject against a bright background, like a white sandy beach or snow. The ISO setting is important to understand, as well as the terms f-stop, shutter speed, and white balance. By understanding the basic principles of photography, you take control of your camera to get the shots you want, and not the shots the camera gives you. Exposure is the combination of the aperture f-stop setting and the shutter speed based on the ISO setting on the camera. So, what is aperture? And shutter speed? Aperture is the f-stop setting on the lens or an internal setting on a digital camera. It refers to the iris or lens opening. A small lens opening, such as f16 or f22, lets in less light than an f-stop set at f4 or f2.8, which are larger lens openings. The newer dedicated digital lenses don't have the f-stop settings on the barrel of the lens. Digital cameras have internal intermediate iris settings between the major customary f-stop settings. As you change from one f-stop setting to another, you increase or decrease the amount of light reaching the sensor by 1/2 or by 2. For example, if your f-stop is set at f11 and you open up the lens by switching to f8, you are letting in twice as much light. If you switch from f8 to f11, closing the lens down, you are letting in half as much light. To get the same correct exposure when you open up the iris or close down the iris, you also have to change the shutter speed to compensate.
I wish a video like this had been available when I was learning photography over 40 years ago. I bought dozens of books on various subjects in photography. I guarantee you will learn more in 46 minutes watching this video than you will learn reading a book or taking a photo course. You may have to watch the video several times to absorb all the information. Here's another excerpt from this video.
What is ISO? The ISO settings we use today with digital cameras is based on the old Sunny 16 rule or guide, which was a measurement for film sensitivity to light with the f-stop set at f16. The ISO number represents the correct shutter speed. The lower the number, the less sensitive. The higher the number, the more sensitive to light. The Sunny 16 rule or guide illustrates the correct exposure on a clear, bright, sunny day with the camera pointed at a subject in direct sunlight. This is a starting point. Some digital cameras are more sensitive to light than others. Some are less. You can make adjustments depending on your camera and shutter speed settings close to the ISO. For example, an ISO setting of 200 refers to the correct shutter speed with the f-stop set at f16 if you are shooting a scene or subject outside on a clear, bright, sunny day with shadows on the ground. If your ISO setting is set at 400 under the same circumstances, your shutter speed would be 1/400th of a second at f/16. Each of the settings on this list will produce the same correctly exposed photograph on a bright sunny day. The lower the ISO setting, the higher the quality of the photograph. The lowest ISO number settings on most newer digital cameras is 100 or 200. The lower settings are indicated differently on different cameras, which would represent a 160 setting, 125 or 100 setting. The lower numbers 100 to 200 is ideal for shooting in daylight with sharp, crisp detail. The higher numbers 400 to 3200 are better for low-light situations, such as indoor sporting events or moving subjects when you have to hand-hold your camera and need faster shutter speeds without using a flash. High ISO settings such as 800, 1600.
I hope that excerpt from the video made you more interested in becoming a better photographer. To get the video, go to my website at www.csphotovideo.com or click on the link below in the description area. You have 3 options for getting the video. The Blu-ray disc high definition version is $29.99. The standard definition DVD is only $24.99. Or you can download the video directly to your computer for only $19.99. I hope you liked my presentation and subscribe to my channel for more photo tips on photography. Most creative photographers sees the image up here before they see the image in the viewfinder. When you know and understand the basic principles of photography, you can create that image in the camera. Thanks, good luck, and keep shooting.